Glad to introduce myself. I'm Tom Hovestol. I was born in Chicago, but I claim Wisconsin as my home. Went to school at Wheaton College. After college, I spent 3 years in Africa teaching history to African students and biology. Then went to seminary at Trinity Seminary in the northern part of Chicago. And after that, I went to Houston, Texas, where I was a pastor for 9 years. And then 26 years, a pastor in Longmont, Colorado. And I've just come here to Sheridan, Wyoming. Yeah, my wife, Carrie, fittingly for Sheridan, is a VA nurse. She works at the VA hospital down in Denver. She works in the what's called the infusion clinic, so she mainly does chemotherapy for cancer patients. She's also involved in the team that's moving from their present old hospital in downtown Denver to their new, very, very large hospital on the eastern side of Denver. So she heads up that team for her department. So she's still working in Denver, and I'm up here in Sheridan. We get back and forth as much as we can. I'm one of 8 children, and I guess I've continued the string. I have 5 children of my own and 9 grandchildren. My oldest is 34, and my youngest is 21. And for my grandchildren, the oldest is 6, and the youngest is brand new. I finished 26 years as the pastor of Calvary Church in Longmont. It's a conservative Baptist church there. Boulder County is a little bit different than Sheridan in many, many ways. One, we have a very, very highly educated community because of our proximity to CU in Boulder. The church was full of high-tech people as well as professors and others, especially in the sciences. 26 years there were really, really good years. Went through, of course, as all churches do, some high points and some low points, but it was a beloved congregation, and it was hard to leave them, but it was the right time. And after that, I took a couple months off, and then my passion is the church, serving the church, and this opportunity to come to First Baptist Sheridan came up, and I'm very, very glad that I said yes. One of the incredible benefits I've had, I don't know why, but I've been able to travel extensively. I grew up in a rural community, so I didn't know much at all about travel until I went to Africa. And from that point on, I've had the bug. I've been now in more countries than states. I think I've been in 50 countries. I haven't been in 50 states yet. And I have taken many groups, especially to the Middle East. I've taken 10 groups to the Middle East. I've taken groups to Africa, to Turkey, several to Turkey, to Greece, to Italy. And then last summer I took a group to Europe on a Reformation tour. So I've traveled a lot to all portions of the world. Haven't been to Antarctica yet, but everywhere else I've been, especially Africa. I think I've been to 15 different countries in Africa. I've had the privilege to write 2 books while I was in Longmont, Colorado, both published by Moody Press. The first book was published in 1997. It's entitled Extreme Righteousness, Seeing Ourselves in the Pharisees. It's basically a study of the Pharisees in the Gospels and how much we evangelicals, and I, resemble the Pharisees. The second book I wrote just several years ago, it's entitled Spiritual Profiling, and that is a book that outlines the 8 different kinds of people that Jesus interacted with when he was here on earth, and they're pretty easy to identify in the Gospels. And then, as I wrote that book, I studied how Jesus interacted with each of these 8 different kinds of people, and he is remarkably similar with each one, but with each of the 8, totally different. For example, Jesus never once goes to a Gentile, never once. The Gentiles always come to him, and it's usually at a point of great, great need. On the other hand, Jesus constantly goes to Jewish people who don't attend synagogue, and usually he invites himself over for dinner. It's a huge difference. So those are 2 of the groups that Jesus dealt with. Gentiles, and he dealt with many Romans and Greek people, as well as what you would call unsynagogued Jewish people. Two examples of that group would be Matthew and Zacchaeus. Because they were tax collectors, though Jewish, working for the Roman government, they were hated by their fellow Jewish compatriots, and they were not allowed to attend the synagogue. Mary Magdalene would have been another, you might call them secular Jews. They would not be welcomed in the synagogues. Jesus had a particular love for this group of people. So that book is about how Jesus interacted with 8 different kinds of people in the Gospels. And then I made how those 8 different groups resemble us in our world today. And in fact, that one has an online test that you can take, and when you do, it puts you into 2 of those categories that Jesus dealt with in his day.
Where do you go for the test?
Online. You get it online. Just go to Spiritual Profiling. I suppose you'll find it. You can't miss it. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure that's the only book by that title. Okay. I intend here over the next few months to study with the congregation through the book of Ephesians. The main reason is the book of Ephesians is the book in the Bible about the church. It tells us who we are and what God wants us to do. And it's divided very easily into 2 sections. Another reason is because the church at Ephesus is the only church in all of the Bible that you can get a long-term perspective on how they did over a 65-year period. The Bible is rather clear that some of the people who first acknowledged Jesus at Pentecost, which was roughly 30 A.D., were from the chief city in Asia, which is Ephesus. So they would have been the first converts in the church. And then, of course, Paul was involved in the planting of it. Timothy was there. Mary would have been in the church of Ephesus. John was there. Peter was there. Apollos, Priscilla, and Aquila, all of those had a very vital part in the church of Ephesus. But you can see its life cycle over 65 years until finally Jesus, around the year 95, writes a letter to the church of Ephesus. That's included in the book of Revelation. So it's a very interesting study. It is inarguably the most important church that has ever existed or that ever will exist. I would say that because of who was there. You could never have a church like that again. I'm just glad to be here, part of First Baptist Church. It's a privilege to be asked to serve as the interim pastor of this church. My main purpose is to help the church while we search together for God's provision of a new pastor for the church. And I relish my role and look at it as a supportive role to the people who are here. And thus far, I've been pretty impressed.